Hi. So thank you so much for joining me here at Spotlight.
Hey,
Um,
it's no problem.
Thanks so much for taking the time. Would you mind just giving a short introduction as to who you are and what you do?
Yeah, so I'm Rebecca. I've got over 8 years experience of organic social, but I've also worked for brands such as Gymshark, Flow Health. Oh yeah, I'm also currently a mentor at the Fashion Retail Academy based in London. Finally, I'm a blog columnist for the Pretty Little Marketer community, covering platform updates. So a lot of different things happening, but I very much enjoy it.
Nice. Okay, good. And the main reason that we're here and we're talking is because you also suffer from PMDD, just like me.
Yeah, it's a great thing to have to deal with on a monthly basis, but I suppose in a way it kind of helps you stay in check with yourself, doesn't it? So,
Yeah, well, it does. I've spoken to several women who say it really boost your self-regulation skills. So it's also got that kind of positive side to it. But looking back, how did you realize something was off with your cycle?
so I've always been quite an emotional person, and I have had to learn to love that about myself because a lot of people, especially society in general, like they always say that women are overly emotional and you just think that's normal. But I started to notice more so before my period that I would just change into what felt like a completely different person. And I guess I was really able to track it. And this is like a shameless plug for an ex-employer. But obviously, when you're working for a brand such as Flow and have access to their platform, that's when I really started to notice the changes. I think it was when, well, I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time, who definitely exacerbated my PMDD. So, it's not all just on me. And I think we were having these back and forth conversations about why we were arguing so much or having these heated conversations or why I was overreacting. So I started tracking my moods in Flow because some people might not know, but you can also track your moods and lots of other things in there. At this point, I genuinely just thought like this was normal behavior, which obviously isn't the case. I think I just researched PMDD, or I was researching my symptoms or mood swings, and it came up. And then I read into it a little bit more and I was like, okay, this sounds quite familiar. So I went from there and I then went to the doctors with my report, also again made by Flow. Promise this isn't sponsored or anything, but it's a great tool for all women. And then, yeah, they were basically like, we agree, we're pretty sure that this is the diagnosis that you have. And that's been almost, I want to say it's been about 2 years since I was diagnosed now. So, yeah.
Oh, amazing. Like you're the first person who I talked to whose diagnosis journey has gone so smoothly. So that makes me really hopeful. So it's so different from all the stories you hear of like, yeah, they didn't believe me or they just dismissed it or they misdiagnosed me. So what in this do you think made the difference that, in your case it went so well?
I think that because I was like, and it really sucks that women have to prepare to advocate for themselves during a doctor's appointment because, like, why should you have to do that for any case? But I think it probably did help that my healthcare provider was a woman, and because I'd done my research and I wasn't well educated on it because I'm definitely not an expert, but because I'd got that report that showed the similarities throughout my different cycles of whatever period it was, I think it was either 3 or 6 months period. I think that definitely helped. And I'd really pinpointed down all the symptoms that were possible. So not just the irrational emotional reactions, but I can't remember what springs to mind with the other symptoms right now, but I'm pretty sure bloating's one of them, and just not great stuff to have to deal with. Headaches was definitely something that I always used to have as well. But again, it's just disregarded as, oh yeah, that's just your period, or oh yeah, that's just time of the month, normal hormones and everything, but it's not.
Yeah, makes sense. So like in my case, I've been to several healthcare providers who didn't really accept my self-diagnosis of PMDD, but this last one, the difference was that I brought my partner, who is a man, who
Interesting.
at first was sitting there silently while I was explaining, where then the healthcare provider, my GP, was like, well, I'm not sure. Are you sure it's not just anxiety? Are you sure it's not, blah? And when he started with what's really affecting our relationship, and I'm feeling very anxious about it, and I'm not doing well, that's when she started to listen and went, wow, if it's affecting your relationship that badly, we definitely have to do something about it.
That I've definitely said something like this recently to someone, if it wasn't yourself, but I'm just so lucky that in the relationship that I am in now, that I've got such an understanding and supportive partner. The amount that he looks after me during the time before my period and, leading up to, is just a godsend. So yeah, I think it's really good that your partner was able to also support you during that time.
Yeah, definitely. I feel I'm really lucky with that as well. He was willing to invest that time and that effort to really advocate for me as well,
Yeah.
to help strengthen my case. But as you said, it shouldn't be necessary.
Shouldn't be.
But it's really good to hear about your relationship going so well. Can you explain a little bit more about how you've learned to communicate about your PMDD, especially in such an intimate relationship, and what are some coping mechanisms you have together with your partner?
Yeah, so I think, to be honest, I don't remember. It feels weird because, as I said, I don't remember it being a big thing. And maybe that's a good thing, because obviously, like, if I don't remember it being a big thing, it doesn't mean that there was a song and dance and a hoo-ha about it. But I think mainly it's just being really honest with your partner and just communicating how you might be feeling. Like, there'll often be times where I say, I feel sad, and then my boyfriend will ask me why, and then I will explain. And it doesn't tend to be anything, or at least I can't think of anything recently that was serious. I mean, there's been some stress around job troubles and stuff that I have been going through, and my boyfriend has been an absolute rock in supporting me there as well. And I just think it really is about having empathy and understanding that relationships in general, with or without PMDD, like when one of you is feeling a little bit less, the other one is probably going to be more giving more, and it's kind of like that balance and give and take relationship. But I do just think, yeah, just being as honest as possible with your feelings is key. And if for whatever reason they don't like that honesty or reflect it back on you and make you feel like it's your fault, I think that's when you have to have a honest conversation with yourself about whether this person is the right person for you. Because in my previous relationship, even though I kind of said like, oh, I'm only acting this way because of my PMDD, it never felt like that was accepted. It felt like that was an excuse. And it shouldn't be an excuse, because it's not an excuse. It's just not an excuse. It's really hard to get people to believe you, as you are well aware from your conversations with your GP. But yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And have you ever gotten advice about PMDD that didn't really work for you or just made things worse?
I don't think so. And I think that's a really interesting question. The advice that is always given is exercise more, drink more, drink more water, eat well, go to bed early, all that good stuff. The usual kind of recommendations for whatever ailments you might be experiencing. And I'm sure they probably do help. But it still sucks knowing that, oh, it's that's what's gotta, is gonna make me feel better. You mean it's not the 32-piece Dubai chocolate box that I have in my fridge? Eating that in its entirety? I mean, obviously it does help, but not so much in the actual grand scheme of things. It's a really interesting question because I don't think I have. I mean, I'm sure my ex, and I don't want to make this conversation about my ex, but it's just a complete contrast of where I am now in that relationship. And I'm sure he probably said some kind of unhelpful things which weren't helpful. What about yourself? Is there a reason why that question comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the difficulty here is that PMDD affects people in so many different ways that what works for one person might not work for another. So even if you're talking to a fellow PMDD sufferer, might not apply to you entirely. So
Yeah, sure.
but in my case, I mean, given the fact that, you know, all the women around me had never experienced PMDD before, didn't really know much about it. My mom comes to mind. She's a very pragmatic lady who's like, just get on with things and don't overthink it. And growing up and going through puberty and then starting, you know, with the PMDD symptoms and things, like, don't be so dramatic, we'll be fine, just rationalize it. I think the worst advice you could give someone who's having PMDD symptoms is don't overthink things, that it's not such a big deal, just get over it.
To be fair, when you just said those, I was like, whoa, that's unlocked my memory of, yeah, it's those types of sayings that my ex would say to me. I love and adore my mom, and I know that she means well, but I'm pretty sure as well from her perspective there might have been, and I think that's just a reflection of, in general, female health understanding as a whole, because there's not enough research into that. I think it just shows through, for example, I remember the one time when I decided to go back to therapy or something like that. This was pre-diagnosis as well. I remember the phrase my mum said, which was, oh, I thought the depression would have gone away by now. I think that is reflective of just the general stigma around mental health in general, not just the PMDD, because obviously it's not something that just disappears. There's no magical elixir that's going to get rid of every single symptom. It's about managing it and being okay with it. And I think it's very similar to PMDD. I have my good days and I have my really, really bad days. Thankfully, my really, really bad days do seem to be less frequent. As I mentioned earlier, I've got various different things happening and going on at the moment where I'm being too hard on myself, which I think, yeah, are throwing things off a little bit. But I think as time has gone on, I definitely deal with my PMDD a lot better.
Okay, and following on from that, how are you managing your PMDD, like, bad days at the moment?
Well, my bad days, I suppose, I can always tell whether I've had or not had enough sleep. And I'm quite bad at going to bed early. I'm a gamer, so whether it's me playing like solo RPGs or whether it's me jumping on multiplayer games with the boys, I just notice that I struggle to get to sleep quicker than if I had maybe like a shower or read a book, for example. So that can definitely impact my sleep, and then I'll just end up scrolling, whether that be on LinkedIn or TikTok or Instagram or a combination of the three. One thing, and it's always so cliche, it goes back to the thing that I said earlier about like, oh, of course it's the movement of the body, but going outside, whether it's sunny or not, I feel like is always like just a good antidote to whatever you've got going on in your life, whether that's PMDD or something else entirely. Especially right now, I mentioned earlier, I think it's really, really warm here in the UK, really hot. I think it reached 26 degrees today. So obviously the sunshine makes it a lot better. But I did also see, just for extra context, I'm on sertraline, which is an antidepressant for my PMDD. And Mind Charity shared on their LinkedIn and Instagram a post that basically said that if you are on some form of antidepressant, you might deal with heat slightly differently, which I had no idea about, which again just shows the lack of understanding of mental health issues in general. But that besides the point anyway. I feel like I'm rambling. Just getting outside. I think as well, any tasks that don't need a decision, I suffer from decision overload anyway at the best of times, but then my PMDD definitely makes that a whole lot worse. So if I'm just faced with a challenge and I'm at a crossroads, I'm just like, Rob, who's my boyfriend, I need you to decide, because literally my capacity is not there. But then I get frustrated at myself because I can't make that decision. And I guess also just trying to be kinder to myself and accepting that it's not who I am as a person. It's just a part of me that I manage to the best of my abilities when I can, because it is just one side of me. It's not who I am.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for that answer. And yeah, this decision-making thing, it's funny. You're the first person I've talked to who's mentioned this, but I did just experience something similar where my partner has noticed a pattern in that every time I'm suffering from PMDD, I'm making really strange decisions too quickly, especially when it comes to money, because I just want to get it over with. It's like, oh, we need something, I'll just order it online and I'll just pay way too much for it because I just don't want to deal with the researching and the comparing and the like figuring it all out kind of thing. And he's like, can you please just run these things by me first when you're in this kind of phase, because I notice you're just going for it because you just cannot be bothered with all the stuff around it.
Yeah, it's that kind of recklessness. I have definitely experienced that. And I don't know whether it's a byproduct of the stress that we feel as a symptom, but funny story. Obviously, we're chatting earlier about how we're both in the Pretty Little Marketers group. There's a funny story behind that. Obviously, I love being in there, but the reason why I bought the membership in the first place was because obviously I've got PMDD, so I'm gonna be emotionally charged anyway. But then at the time there were some changes at work, which at first I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if they're going to affect me. I assumed they wouldn't because of the nature of my role, but I wasn't sure, and I was just starting to panic and be like, oh my God. So my first decision was just to be like, I'm going to pay the annual fee for the Pretty Little Marketer membership. So at least I've got some sort of support network, some sort of community that I can rely on and engage with. And that was pretty much like a stress-fueled decision. So very similar to you. Rob makes a joke about it every now and then, especially if I'm like asking him whether I should purchase X, Y, or Z. And it pops up every now and then. Of course, a Pretty Little Marketer regardless. But yeah, it's really funny how quickly I made that decision. And I've definitely done it with other things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so strange how differently you feel like you act then, because then when I get out of it, I'm like, did I
really need that? I'm terrible as well with ASOS, and I mean just with lounge in general, to be fair. I did a massive order the other week and I've now looked at it and I'm just like, I don't need any of the stuff that I've bought, and I'm not actually sure on it anyway. It's not that the stuff's not nice. So it's just like, I don't know why I've bought this because it's not my usual style. So yeah, it's bizarre how it impacts different elements of life, not just relationships, but shopping decisions, work, finance, all that stuff too.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're living according to that cycle, really, literally. And we have to make those decisions, plan important meetings, not in that time period, and all this kind of stuff, like managing that time. Yes, it's very strange, but that's our reality as long as there's not really a cure that doesn't involve a major surgery.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or having a child, like, because I'm sure some people might want a child at some point, and like I'm undecided as to whether that's something that I want to explore. I just remember the response to being how I was so emotional was to have a child, and I'm just like, respectfully, no. But yeah, even the sertraline for me doesn't always work all the time, especially if I'm experiencing stress from other external factors as well. But yeah, it does suck that there's very little known about it.
Yeah, from personal experience, I can tell you that being pregnant does help with the mental symptoms. You get a lot more physical symptoms that are not pleasant, but
Right.
the MDD does come back as your cycle comes back. One funny bit of advice that I wasn't offended by, but that was pretty extreme, was like, okay, why don't you just stay pregnant for the rest of your menstruating life?
I'm sure I've heard that as well. I've seen that somewhere or heard it, and I was just like, that is just no.
I mean, sure, for the PMDD part, but I don't think that's very good for the rest of my body.
Yeah, like it's wild, because if it was a male experienced medical issue, would they be saying that to them? Like, no. But
yeah, that's really interesting that we share that symptom indeed. Well, seeing as a lot of people out there who might suspect that they have PMDD, but they weren't necessarily sure, what would you want them to know, and how would you want them to get further in their journey?
I think for me, I don't know if you know who Vicky Pattinson is. I think she was on Jersey Shore, which is a reality show in the UK. The reason I mention her is that I would try and seek out celebrities that use their platform to educate about PMDD. The reason I mention Vicky is because she is one of them. She does have PMDD, and she shares such a raw, real experience and journey, which I think early on in my journey, it felt good in a weird way, because it just felt like I wasn't alone, and that I wasn't going crazy, and that I wasn't imagining things or being dramatic or overreacting. So I think just trying to find any people or any support networks that are out there, definitely track your symptoms, your moods. It doesn't have to be free flow, like as amazing as an app as that is. It could also be a journal, and you could essentially write down the date, or even the Apple Health app has a really good little journal thing that encourages you to log how you're feeling in a particular moment or overall in the day. And I know it sounds boring, but you can make it a little bit more fun if you want to. I think that's also really good to do. And just don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, stand up for yourself, and walk away from things that aren't supporting you and aren't serving you, because that will only make what you're going through and feeling a lot worse. One of my favorite sayings, and I think this can apply to many different things, is that when a flower is struggling, you don't blame the flower, you fix the environment. I think that's a really nice analogy to have for people. And yeah, I think you just want to be supported and not told that you're being dramatic, I suppose.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's really helpful. And as my last question, looking ahead, because I always like to look ahead with hope, what are your hopes for the future, both for yourself in the PMDD context and for others who are still trying to make sense of it?
Yeah. So for myself, I'm on sertraline, obviously, for my PMDD symptoms. I would like to get to a point that means I can come off them. I do actually have a doctor's appointment tomorrow to discuss like how it's been going, and I don't know whether I'm at that stage just yet, but I would like to at some point be able to raw dog life again, as they say. And in terms of PMDD in general, I think it's an obvious one, but I do hope that more women feel supported and believed and can get the diagnosis that they deserve, but also that just more research and just awareness of the condition as it is. And I think chats like these are only going to help further that, but just not shying away from taboo topics, because obviously periods and menstruation, they are still very much a taboo topic. Even in some cultures, they are seen as disgusting and dirty, which is obviously not the case. Like, it's literally just a biological thing that happens to women and trans men, or anyone with a uterus, basically. So yeah, it's just my hope is that more research is done, charities around it are funded, and yeah, diagnosis has become easier.
Yeah, I like that hopeful vision for the future.
Yeah, I think it can be done, and I think people just need to keep talking about it, and not just women as well, but partners, brothers, whoever is in someone's life who thinks they've got PMDD, just help them advocate for themselves and advocate for them as well. I think you're the perfect example of that when you went with your partner to the GP and he was there to support you. I think that's also how we can win, if that's how we want to put it.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything you want to add? Because I'm out of questions.
I don't think so. I've really enjoyed this chat though. I prepared loads of notes because obviously the questions that you sent over, and I thought they were really great and allowed me to reflect on my journey myself as well. I think I've said a lot, really enjoyed it. And I think, yeah, I'd love to have more conversations as well around PMDD. And I think if anyone else is maybe thinking that they might have it or wants to know more, let's have that conversation, because that's also only going to help the awareness of the condition and further the progress that we can make as well. So, yeah, thank you very much for having me and asking me about my experience. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time and for being so open about it.
Thank you very much.